Welcome to the 87th episode of I Wrote This News. Today is Wednesday, April 6, 2022. It's time for news to get you over your weekly hump. Today's story: Ivermectin is highly effective, just not for COVID-19. The anti-parasitic drug Ivermectin, which has surged in popularity as an alternative treatment for COVID-19 despite a lack of strong research to back it up, showed no sign of alleviating the disease, according to results of a large clinical trial published on Wednesday. The study, which compared more than 1,300 people infected with the coronavirus in Brazil who received either ivermectin or a placebo, effectively ruled out the drug as a treatment for COVID, the study's authors said. For decades, ivermectin has been widely used to treat parasitic infections. Early in the pandemic, when researchers were trying thousands of old drugs against COVID-19, laboratory experiments on cells suggested that ivermectin might block the coronavirus. Around the world, researchers carried out small clinical trials to see if the drug treated the disease. In December 2020, Andrew Hill, a virologist at the University of Liverpool in England, reviewed the results of 23 trials and concluded that ivermectin appeared to significantly lower the risk of death from COVID-19. Ivermectin's popularity continued to climb in the pandemic's second year. The podcaster Joe Rogan promoted it repeatedly on his shows. In a single week in August, U.S. insurance companies spent $2.4 million paying for ivermectin treatments. When health agencies and insurance companies moved to limit access to the use of ivermectin for COVID-19, proponents cried foul. But not long after Dr. Hill published his review last summer, reports surfaced that many of the studies he included in the analysis were flawed and, in at least one case, alleged to be fraudulent. Dr. Hill retracted his original study and started a new one, which he published in January. On their second review, Dr. Hill and his colleagues focused on the studies least likely to be biased. In that stricter survey, ivermectin's benefit vanished. In Brazil, researchers set up a clinical trial known as Together in June 2020 to test COVID patients with a number of widely used drugs, including ivermectin. The treatments were double-blinded, meaning that neither the patients nor their medical staff knew whether they received a COVID treatment drug or a placebo. In a new study published on Wednesday, the Together team reported on its ivermectin data. The results were clear: taking ivermectin did not reduce a COVID patient's risk of ending up in the hospital. None of this is stopping the pro-ivermectin machinery. Robert F. Kennedy's Jr.'s anti-vaccine organization, Children's Health Defense, claimed the New York Times, which reported on the Together study, is continuing to, quote, mislead the public. Dr. Madhava Sethi, an anesthesiologist who now works as CHD's senior science editor, also claimed the study was poorly designed. This is all dangerous nonsense. There are questions that, at least in the near term, the scientific method can't answer. For example, whether there is a God or the fundamental nature of human consciousness. But there are also questions that the scientific method can answer. One of those is whether ivermectin prevents serious illness or hospital admission. And on that question, the answer, despite protests from its supporters, is increasingly no. April 6th is the 96th day of the year in the Gregorian calendar. 269 days remain until the end of the year. Now it's time for On This Date in History. On this date in 1652, at the Cape of Good Hope, Dutch sailor Jan van Riebeeck establishes a resupply camp that eventually becomes Cape Town. 1808, John Jacob Astor incorporates the American Fur Company, that would eventually make him America's first multimillionaire. 1830, Church of Christ, the original Church of the Latter-day Saint movement, is organized by Joseph Smith and others at either Fayette or Manchester, New York. 1841, U.S. President John Tyler is sworn in, 2 days after having become president upon William Henry Harrison's death. 1896, in Athens, the opening of the first modern Olympic Games is celebrated. 1,500 years after the original Games are banned by Roman Emperor Theodosius I. 1929, Huey P. Long, governor of Louisiana, is impeached by the Louisiana House of Representatives. He was impeached for abuses of power, but the proceedings collapsed in the state Senate. His opponents argued his policies and methods were unconstitutional and dictatorial. At its climax, political opposition organized a minor insurrection. 1965, launch of Early Bird, the first commercial communications satellite to be placed in geosynchronous orbit. Celebrating birthdays today are musician and actor Billy D. Williams, businessman John Scully, race car driver Don the Snake Prudhomme, film director Barry Levinson, actor John Ratzenberger, actress Mary Lou Henner, director Rob Epstein, sculptor Iris Hostler, actor Paul Rudd, actor Zach Braff, and Nobel laureate James Watson. He turns 94 years old today. Happy birthday to all of them, and if your birthday is today, a very happy birthday to you as well. By the way, if you or someone you know is having a birthday and would like us to announce it on the show, leave us a voice message or send an email. The links are in the show notes. Today's news was brought to us by the New York Times, Vice, and the website that doesn't dismiss the power of the scientific method, Wikipedia. If you have a comment or a question about anything you've heard today, or if you have a suggestion, please send us a note at IWTN, all one word, at thatradioshow.com. That email address one more time is IWTN, all one word, at thatradioshow.com.
One more thing, if this podcast sounds a little funny, that's because it's also an experiment. All of the vocals were generated using AI technology. Hopefully the show will sound different and better as the tech improves and as we improve at using it. I'm Bob Neese, hoping you have an amazing day. We'll get together again soon.